Hello out there, and doing a quick first impressions video today of a new release from CRKT, and this one is called the Helical. And this is a design from Ken Onion. It comes in two different versions. There's one that has a black D2 blade and black coated aluminum. This one here is gray aluminum and a satin 8CR13 MOV blade. That's the one I went with. Definitely wanted to be able to get something softer for in case I do have to sharpen this like Tanto blade because I'm not a very good sharpener. So went that direction. I like the look of this one. I really do like the satin blade. And there are some interesting things that I wanted to talk about just briefly today before I follow up with a full review in a few weeks. All right, so let's just get into some size comparisons. One of the things you might notice just looking at the knife is that it doesn't seem a lot like a Ken Onion knife. You know, looking at some of his other models for size comparison, a lot of them have recurves. A lot of them are like classic designs that you might be aware of. None of them are Tantos. You know, I don't know of very many, if any, Ken Onion Tanto blades. So that right there was a leak. I have a blur right here. This is my Franken blur. Some of you who have been around for a while might be familiar with this one. Here is the CRKT relay. And then I also have a ripple somewhere around here. Here we go. But the one size comparison that I want to focus on is actually with the Kershaw bare knuckle. And there's a good reason for that. Now, the bare knuckle really is similar when it comes to overall length. You know, we have a cutting edge of right around 3.5 inches, maybe a little bit less with the helical, but again, that Tanto angles and sort of changes the way that edge would go. But if you look at these knives, you know, very comparable in overall length, but the height of them is very different. You know, very short when it comes to the height of the helical. But the one dimension that I really want to focus on is one that I didn't notice in any pictures or in any videos, and it is the width. Look at how chunky this knife is. It is deceptively thick. You know, you don't expect it when you get it in hand, and it was a big surprise for me when I unboxed this knife. I was like, huh, okay, yeah. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there might be a number of people who were looking at picking up a knife like this and thinking it would be very thin and streamlined. And while it isn't very like big in the pocket in this dimension, you know, when it's sitting this way, that width though, you know, does take up a lot of space, and it is something that you definitely want to be aware of, because looking at, you know, some of the other Ken Onion designs, it's very different. You know, and another good example, similarly sized knife, you know, the Benchmade 940 or 943, big difference there when it comes to the width. So definitely something to keep in mind, and something that I thought was curious, because CRKT has another new knife called the CEO, and that's one I want to pick up as well. But that one looks a lot thinner, and I was wondering why you would have two knives that were so similar, and, you know, they're really not that similar now that I get the helical in hand. So interesting thing there. Getting into more of the details of the knife, I'm going to do a quick little spec test with the scale, give you an idea of what this knife weighs. It is decently light at 3.56 ounces. We do have full stainless steel liners going the entire length of the aluminum frame, and there is really no milling on those. So I mean, it is just a like I said, a little bit thicker. It is going to have that extra baggage, a little bit extra weight than you would expect just looking at the knife. Getting back to the blade though, 8CR13 MOV, certainly not a steel that I am unfamiliar with. I have no problem with this steel whatsoever. When it comes to the blade, I have one thing that I really like and one thing that I sort of don't like. The don't like thing though is the Tanto blade. It's just not my thing. I'm not a big fan of it, but I knew that going in. You know, I still decided to pick up the knife, so I can't really hold that against the knife. One thing that I do like though about the edge and the blade shape is that even though there is a Tanto, you do have a considerable amount of just like flat Warncliffe style kind of cutting edge. You know, we look at the length of it, over 2.5 inches, 2.75 inches of just straight cutting edge. And if you compare it to, say, like, other Wharncliffes, a lot of times that angle starts further down, and so you lose a lot of that like more utility kind of cutting edge. Here, the Tanto is actually not too much of the blade, and so if I'm going to have a Tanto, I would want it to be like this, so definitely not a bad thing. The big win though, the big win on this blade is the jimping. CRKT has just knocked the jimping out of the park with this knife. Really, really big fan of it. There's a lot of it. It extends pretty far down the spine of the knife before you get to the swedge, and it's very functional, and it's thick, and it grips the thumb really nicely. So this is where you want to hold the knife. Looking at it, you might think, oh, well, this will work over here with this like little bit of a ramp. Not really. You're not really going to hold the knife and get a lot of comfort and purchase like this. You're going to be using, to some extent, the jimping either in this position or further up. That's where I think, for me, cutting, this is where it would be most useful. So, but they just did, really excellent job with it. As we move on back and we check out the frame, there is some contouring on the scales. This is a little bit slick, a little bit more slick than I would like. It feels like whatever coating is on here is just really thick, and there's just not like a lot of texture, not a lot of powder like you might hope. But like I said, I mean, just the way that this jimping grips the thumb, and you have your forefinger down here with the flipper tab sort of locking it in, it is pretty darn comfortable. And I don't think this is going anywhere at all. You don't have any other spots where you're getting very good traction, but I don't think you need them either. So it could be better, but it doesn't really need to be, if that makes sense. All right, and then as we go all the way to the back, you can see we are open frame. We have a small backspacer near the butt of the knife here. We have a one-position deep carry pocket clip. It is not reversible. It is not movable to tip down versus tip up. All right, so one spot, but it is a good clip for what it is. All right, and then the lockup, well, you can see that the lockup might be a little bit iffy. We have a basically 100% lockup. There's full contact right there, but there's no movement up and down, no movement left and right. So functionally, I think it's good. Long term, how is that going to hold up? Not sure. So don't know if this is just my knife or if this is the way that all the models are going to lock up. But again, it's doing the job just fine, and I'm pretty confident that if at the end of the day there is any kind of issue with this, that CRKT would take care of it. So I'm not really worried about that at this point. Now, one thing when I did unbox the knife that I remarked to myself, I take a look at the flipper tab, I opened the knife up, and I thought, I didn't know this was on IKBS. I didn't think it was. Because it was that smooth, I thought it must be on IKBS. And you want to know what, guys? It isn't. It is just a super smooth flipper. It is actually on, I don't think you can see, maybe you can, it's like Teflon. Yeah, so it's got Teflon washers, and I mean, you can look at this as a pro or a con, I guess. The con being that it's not on ball bearings, but the pro that it is stupid smooth. I mean, the action, the detent is very nice. It's, not shaken out at all, and it's got a strong detent that when you break it, it's going to fly open, and the thing is just smooth. I'll cut in some footage of how it doesn't drop shut, but I mean, it is a pretty smooth closing knife, so you don't feel a lot of friction. So I'm pretty happy with that. And overall, guys, I think that this is going to be a good knife for the people who are interested in it. Maybe it being a Tanto, it's not going to have as big a market as a lot of the other Ken Onion CRKTs. But if you're looking for a knife like this and you pick it up, either this one at the $45 price point or the D2 at the $60, I think that, if you know what you're getting, you'll probably be pretty happy with it. It's not going to really surprise you in any way, shape, or form. There are ways that it could have been done better and maybe at the same price or even cheaper. But my first impression is that, it's a pretty serviceable, decent model, a little bit of a change up from Ken Onion, and one that I was really interested to check out. And at this point, I'm pretty satisfied with it. So obviously there's a lot of use to put on it, and a lot more carrying, and a little bit more investigation of this knife. But yeah, definitely not a bad first impression. I'm glad I got this version and not the D2. I don't think I'd have any real use for the D2, and I don't really need that upgrade in this knife. But yeah, as it is, yeah, definitely one that I'm looking forward to carrying more and getting more information about. So what are your thoughts on it, guys? Interested in this one? And any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, as always, let me know down below. But I'll talk with you soon. Have a good one.